Okay.
Welcome, welcome. I'm here with our friend Jeff Pone, and today
Good
we're going to
morning. Good morning, Mr. Siskind.
good afternoon,
Good afternoon, all. Me, it's morning.
but
I
but
just woke up.
today we're going to talk about Michael Silverblatt, also known as the Bookworm, who is a friend of ours, and he was a real unique character, and I'm sorry that he passed on because he was a great guy.
All right.
Um,
R.I.P. Bookworm.
yeah, RIP. Um, I first met him when we moved to Los Angeles in 1986. And one night the phone rang and he says, you don't know me, but my name is Michael Silverblatt, and I heard you were coming to Los Angeles. And I wonder if you would want to do a literary workshop at Santa Monica College. So I didn't know what to think because I didn't know who Michael Silverblatt was and how did he know I was coming to Los Angeles and all this. But I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I did. And then Ann Beattie, who's a famous writer, she was also there. And that was my first encounter with Michael. And it became a very close friendship for a number of years. And we can talk about that. Jeff, how did you meet Michael?
Well, I knew Michael Silverblatt not nearly as intimately as you did. Um, I heard him speak publicly, and he was a sparkling raconteur, had an encyclopedic knowledge of contemporary literature. He was a great storyteller, really a fascinating man. And as you said, unique for
Yeah,
sure. And my observation was that Michael, as a public person, was a persona he created because it seemed to me like uh, socially, Michael appeared awkward, uncomfortable, always kind of squirming. And after I'd heard him speak a few times, and I also then started to watch his interviews with great contemporary writers.
yeah,
You, one of them. I remember
yeah.
you vividly your interview with Michael. Um, I one day I asked him if he would speak at a function, and he agreed, but he couldn't drive,
Right.
so I had to pick him up at his home. And I walked in, and there was Michael, and there was his home, which was filled floor to ceiling with stacked books.
Was that
It was in West
w-
Hollywood.
yeah, I'm Alta Vista. He lived there the whole time. Was
Right.
that on the first floor? Because
Yes. It was on the first floor.
yeah,
And as I
'cause-
said, it was completely packed with books.
right.
There was barely room for any furniture.
Yeah, there was no. See, you might, depending on when it was, that might have been after he got the second apartment in the same building
Oh,
where
okay.
he lived on the second floor, and the first floor became entirely devoted to books.
Wow.
I mean, and he had the shelves like in a library,
Yeah,
and
it was like a library.
it's right. And I'll tell you something else about him was that he'd read most of those books.
Yep.
And and I don't know how he did it, but he see
Those books were not for show.
no, they weren't for show. A
No.
lot of them were had been sent to him by the publisher because they would send writers on book tours and they would come to Los Angeles, and they would go on his show, and
Mhm.
in preparation for that, their book would be sent to Michael, and but there were a lot of other books. There were classics. There was everything, and
I'd never seen anything like it.
yeah, and I was on his show 4 times, twice about books that I had done, and twice about April Fools, where it wa- it was it was supposed to be funny, and I thought it was funny. I don't know if anybody else did, but he was he came up with that idea, but he had also made him kind of nervous because he his tenure at the station was could be kind of precarious. As long as Ruth Seymour was alive,
Mhm.
he was pretty secure, I think. But it could change right away, especially before he got taken up by the Lannan Foundation, which is a charitable foundation which paid him to be on the show. Now, I
Oh.
don't know what he did for money before he got the Lannan Foundation. I know that when I met him, which was before the show started, he was working at a PR agency, public relations agency, which he later told me was a great thing for him because it got him, he had to talk to people and he couldn't shy away from that.
Wow.
And then shortly after that, then he started doing the show. Um, but I agree with you that he seemed to have, I would say he had a public face. He had a semi-public face when he was in a at a party or when you were talking to me or to you.
Right.
And then he had a probably a private identity, which I didn't know too much about.
And I don't know if I actually encountered the Michael's private identity. I
Right,
mean, I remember clearly, well, not so clearly, because in my memory, the day I went to pick Michael up at his home, I I believe it was a first floor apartment,
yeah,
completely packed with books,
right,
but there was one little chair, a little tiny chair that I
yeah,
sat in.
yeah,
And as I sat in it, Michael was preparing to come and speak. And he was trying on outfits, which was interesting. And while he got ready, he told me a story uh, about when he was a little boy conducting a tea party for his dolls. And he couldn't stop giggling
right.
and made me giggle too. And when he spoke that day, he was positively riveting.
Oh yeah, he could. He told me a story that made a big impression on me. I don't know why, but similar to the kind of story he told you. He grew up in New York in Queens, I think,
Mhm.
and or maybe Brooklyn. And there was when he was about 11 years old, 10 or 11, there was a park. He was in the park by himself, uh, I guess sitting on a bench or something. And then a group of kind of tough kids came in who were older, and this girl came up to Michael and said something like, "Did you ever hear of the O'Shea brothers?" And Michael goes, "No, I never heard of them." And she says, "Wait a minute. How can it be that you never heard of the O'Shea brothers?" And he said, "I don't know. I never heard of them." And then she she went back to the O'Shea brothers. But I think that 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 the way the way that he reacted to it, this girl was something she didn't expect because it was so honest and so kind of naive, but also very disarming. But
He was disarming.
yeah, and I that was a funny story. Um, he sometimes he would tell stories. Sometimes he would talk about books. Um, he if he liked the book, he would talk about it more than otherwise. Um, but that was basically what it was. And for a long time before he started the station, we used to go to this. I would go up on Sunset Boulevard where he's got the PR agency. And we'd go to this hotel and we would have lunch, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, he started to become a big celebrity,
The bookworm.
the bookworm.
And you
And
know, Mitch, when I was a fan of that show,
yeah, sure,
and Michael had the top uh contemporary authors on that show,
right.
and it was fascinating. And he was a great interviewer, and he was able to be who he was and pull stories out of these authors. And do you happen to know if Michael was friendly with these authors? Or
Not with many of them. I mean, I think he was with some of them, but not with all of them. And I talked to some of the authors about because I knew them too about what they think of the show, and they just said, it was very good. It was easy to do,
right.
and that was it. Uh,
David Foster Wallace
yeah,
was one of the authors I remember clearly.
he liked Michael,
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
right? Most of
I mean,
them liked him.
you used the word disarming, and he was very gentle and erudite, but quite disarming,
Yeah,
unthreatening.
and he didn't use any notes.
Right.
And he became pretty well known. It started to be, even though he didn't really talk about himself, he didn't go, he would talk about himself, but he didn't go overboard. But he became well known for his mannerisms. And he even, I think he was in a movie where the guy played him,
I didn't
supposed to be
know
an interviewer, because he had a very unique way of talking.
that. Yeah.
Um,
It was thoughtful.
he was thoughtful
You
and
could see him thinking.
yeah. And he was enthusiastic. Whatever
Yeah.
he said, and he could keep the ball rolling.
Yep.
Um, so it was good. But and with me, it was kind of interesting what we talked about the other day because I think he wanted to mentor me,
Oh,
and it was
a
something
great
that
mentor. He
yeah.
could have
It was
been, was he?
Well, he tried, and but I realized partly through that I can't really be mentored. But he tried hard, and he got me a book deal where they published a book,
Wow.
and he had been um, then I went on the show about the book, but we both realized
What book was that, Mitch?
it's called "Do Not Be a Gentleman When You Say Good Night,"
Oh,
and it's
great
not
title.
Amazon. Um, and it was a good publisher, a small press publisher. But um, as far as mentoring me, either he wasn't particularly set up for that, and neither was I. So it didn't go anywhere.
It must have been an interesting experience.
It was. It took a few years from the
He,
time they agreed to do it to the time the book finally came out. And
Michael, the kind of minor celebrity he became when he was mentoring you?
yeah, he was a celebrity.
Huh.
But he wasn't I don't know, I guess there was it didn't work uh as a me turning into a celebrity author, but he tried, and he was very good with, the authors that he had on. I think it really did benefit them because they didn't have to do much, and he would talk, and it would be it's hard. I can hear him in my mind's ear,
He
but
was great at praising.
he would pray, and he had a clock in his head so that he knew exactly how long, there would be. He would talk for 15 minutes, then
Wow.
there'd be a break, and then he would talk for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then it would end. And it was, and he had the things that were good were that he was very good. The name Bookworm was great.
Great.
I don't know who came up with that, and then there was the song. Oh, wait, do you remember
I
it?
I don't remember the song.
There was it was a children's song, and
Oh, yes.
yeah, yeah,
Now I remember it. It was a
right,
great song.
right. It was great, and they would play it at the beginning and at the end. And
Yeah.
actually, there were two songs. I don't know what happened to the first one. It might have been a political thing at the station, but there
Yeah.
was the first song, and then they changed it to the second song, which wasn't as good. But and it wasn't an easy thing to do, like when we did the April Fool's thing, we wanted to do a show where we would talk about Emily Dickinson, 19th century poetry and all this, and then they couldn't see it because you could just hear it. And then we went, oh my God, look what's happened. Emily Dickinson is here. This is Emily Dickinson. And so we had a woman who came and then played Emily Dickinson. Um, and,
Oh,
and it,
wow.
it, it was funny, but
Really? You had an actress.
we had an actress.
Was she
Uh,
good?
yeah, she was great. But
Did
and
Michael direct her or
Well, yeah, we directed her. And the thing was that when you're in a studio or a radio studio, right in front of your face, there's a fur ball that's a that's a microphone. But it's right in your face, and it's not because you can't see anybody else because this
right,
thing's in front of you. And
right.
the first woman we had, she freaked out. She couldn't do it.
Mm.
Um, and she was not an actress. And then we got an actress. Oh, but that was it. Then when I did a recent book. He had me on the show again. We did that. I think we did that on Zoom.
And what book was that?
That was just collected poems. Do you have that book?
Uh,
I'll
I
send you
don't
one.
know if I do. I have the Dogman stories.
Yeah, dog, you have that?
Yeah,
Oh,
I believe I do somewhere,
that,
and I loved it, and I think you signed a copy.
that's a very rare book. Um, but what happened with Michael, I think, was that after Ruth Seymour passed away, that kind of changed a little bit, his relation to the station. And the station moved. I think it used to be at Santa Monica College, and maybe it still was, but it was a different location. And I think he wasn't necessarily going to the studio as much. He
Hmm.
might have done them, on Zoom or on the phone or something.
How did his show end?
That was the peculiar thing that I think he just stopped doing it. He just stopped showing up.
Hmm.
And when that happened, people started writing in and calling, what happened to him? Where is he? And they didn't know where he was. I think they knew that he had a health problem, but that was all they knew about it.
So it was like a mysterious departure.
That's right. But what, I mean, what happened was that he had a real bad fall,
Oh,
um, and
that.
he also had diabetes, but he got really hurt in this fall. And I went to his house to visit him, and he was in real bad shape. He wasn't eating. He was amazingly thin. He looked like, from work camp or something. I mean,
She'd been a hefty guy.
yeah, at one point he was pretty big. And
Yeah.
here he was, he was really emaciated,
Oh,
and he couldn't get out of his bed really.
Jesus.
And
How long before his death was
I,
that?
well, that was the last time I saw him, and I think it went on for maybe a year after that.
And Michael died at 73 years old,
He
right?
died when he was 73.
Yeah.
And but I don't know. I mean, there was no information. I guess they said he died of a health crisis or something. I think one article about it mentioned that he had diabetes, but
Oh,
you know, but it was a kind of scary thing because when you saw him toward the end, it was like a different person.
yeah.
He still had that kind of uh, personality that you referred to the extent that he could, but you could see that he was in bad shape.
I never saw him like that.
No,
No,
nobody saw him that way. I mean, I think if you
you did.
unless you went to his house,
Yeah.
but he was very close to the film critic Pauline Kael.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he used to have conversations with her all the time, yeah, which I participated in too a couple of times. But she was very interested in him, and that was important to him. When she died, that was a close friend that he lost.
Didn't Michael, maybe I'm wrong about this, but didn't Michael produce a movie
Maybe he did.
with Jack Nicholson? I mean, I,
I don't think he produced one. He was in one, I think,
huh.
and then he was in another one where the guy imitated him.
Oh,
But
thought I
he,
remember that he had actually been involved in
yeah, it's possible because
as a producer of some movie. I remember,
yeah. Well,
huh,
he knew a lot of people, and as he became, when it was going good, he was traveling around and stuff, and he was the kind of guy you wouldn't have expected he liked to travel, but he did travel,
right.
and he went to parties and stuff. I don't know,
Hmm.
but you know, he was a person. I don't know if you would say, today everybody's supposed to be autistic. I don't know if he was autistic or whether he
On the
was
spectrum.
on the spectrum, but he was a strange person. And
I remember he spoke at length to me and also when he spoke in public about Asperger's.
yeah,
And he just couldn't stop giggling about the name of that disease, which I believe he had.
well, I remember we were having lunch one time and talking the way we usually talked. And then all of a sudden he started reciting a nursery rhyme or trying to make one up about a big bad wolf and stuff, and it was going on, and he's going on about the big bad wolf, and I didn't know what to say, and then
What?
he said, I said, I'm sorry I did that. He says, I sometimes that happens to me. I don't know why I do it. I don't know what. And he almost was kind of frightened by it. And that he started doing that out of nowhere.
Hmm,
Um, and that was, I mean, I'm sure there's a diagnosis about that. I don't know what it is. Big
right.
bad wolfism. And he was very fond of his cat.
Yeah.
He had his cat that was up in the second floor once he moved up to the second floor.
You remember the name of that cat?
No, I don't remember the cat's name. Uh, he had lots of toys.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There was something very childlike about Michael,
absolutely.
which
Very,
is so interesting because his brain was, I mean, he was incredibly erudite and learned.
especially about contemporary publishing. I mean, I would talk to him about people that there was no reason for him to know about, somebody from Chicago or something, and
Yeah.
he would go into a whole thing about, well, in 61 he did this, and in 73 he did that, and I was just stunned by it. Um, he liked restaurants. Where he lived, and he always lived in the same place. Uh, we
I
would go to the
wonder,
restaurants what's the name of that street?
was it
Beverly,
Alta Vista?
Beverly, on Beverly.
Oh, Beverly, right. But he lived in Alta Vista.
He lived on the side
He
street.
could he could walk to Beverly, right?
Oh yeah, it was right. It was he lived like just a couple, like 50 yards in.
Did he like going to the restaurant Swingers?
He may have. I don't know.
Maybe
Is that on Beverly?
it's a kind of a hipster restaurant on Beverly.
Yeah, he liked going to restaurants where they got to know him and the usual.
They make a big deal. Yeah.
Um, I don't know if he had any siblings. I think he might have. He was very close to his mother. He would go to New York sometimes to see her.
I wonder if any of those restaurants ever named a sandwich after him.
They probably did. There's
Wilton
one
Manor
on
sandwich.
Beverly. It was a very expensive one.
Ah,
Um, what was I going to say about him? Once I got my children, it kind of changed with him.
ah.
I didn't see him as often, and um, it was raising the two children is a lot of work, and I couldn't. He did meet them.
He did meet them.
He did, but there's a good photograph of him with them. I don't know if I have it somewhere,
Hmm.
but there are a lot of good photographs of him online, and some of them
I
are.
would think that Michael would be great with children, being a large child himself in some way.
Well, I know he was very close to. There's a writer named Jim Crusoe who was at Santa Monica College, and I think Michael was very close to his daughter.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think he could he could do that, but he didn't do that with my children. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Um,
Perhaps he felt that your children came between you and him.
I think he did think that. Uh, I don't, we never went into what our expectations of each other were, but there were definitely I was important to him for a while, and then I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't in touch with him that much, but he was a fascinating guy, and
Yes.
that story about the O'Shea brothers, that was, I don't know why that made such an impression on me, but but when he told that story,
Well, it certainly made an impression on him.
I guess it did,
Yeah.
but it was perfectly about him. I mean, it was exactly how he would respond.
Well, he
Um,
seemed to me, the little I knew him, that he was a man whose childhood informed who he was
Absolutely,
to a great extent.
yeah. And I don't know why I mean, another thing that was true of him, I think, was that he was from New York, and people who are from New York, having lived in New York myself, I think if you were a child in New York and Brooklyn or something,
Yeah.
you were a particular kind of person. They had these elite schools in New York that were, you had to pass an exam to go to, and he never tried to do that. Sometimes I wonder why he didn't, but he just went to the public school that was near his house.
His
Um,
parents could have afforded to send him to a private school, right? Or
I think you could go for nothing if you
oh,
pass
wow.
the test.
Wow.
Because I have other friends that went to those schools, but he didn't go. Um, and then he went to Buffalo, University of Buffalo, which at that time was hiring lots of famous writers and stuff. So that was good for him. Um, and then he went to Johns Hopkins for grad school, but he didn't finish.
I, as an aside, this made me remember, which something I hadn't thought of for many, many years, but when my mother tried to enroll me in the Latin School of Chicago, where I matriculated, where I was from first grade through junior year when
Yeah,
Latin decided that I was no longer Latin material.
right.
Um, I had to take a test, and my mother was an extreme perfectionist. So I had to look perfect, and I had a button-down shirt up to my neck,
Yeah.
and I took the test, and I knew I had gotten one question wrong, and I wept. But I did get into Latin, and then, when I was a sophomore, met you. You became my
Yeah,
English teacher and almost football coach.
right.
And but when you talk about these entrance exams for private schools, snooty private schools,
Oh yeah.
it made a real impact on me.
It was really strenuous. Well, that's enough time.
Okay.
So I think we've only gotten our feet a little bit wet about Michael. Maybe we'll come back to it, but
Okay.
it's
Well, in
very
the
interesting.
meantime, it's been a pleasure as always.
Yes,
Rest in peace, Bookworm.
absolutely. All right, Jeff. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Mitch. Take care.
Bye.